All right, hey everybody, I hope you're doing well today. For today's lesson, we're going to go over inversions, and I'm going to show you a little bit more in depth how they work and kind of my silly way of looking at them. The one thing about me teaching piano, you've probably gathered by now, I'm just, I would say, an average level piano player. Really, guitar is my main instrument, but I started teaching piano many years ago because I would get guitar students from another piano teacher here in town, and she just taught just basic chords. So I thought, well, if she can do that on guitar, why can't I do that on piano? And then next thing you know, it just kind of grew. So I am by no means an expert piano player, but I've been practicing pretty hard for like the last 5 years, and so I find that it's really, in certain ways, my teaching, I think, is even better on piano than on guitar, just because I get to teach you kind of like what I've learned fairly recently. Okay, so having said that, I think you'll enjoy this if you're reaching the point where you're doing inversions. So let's start today's lesson off first by playing our C major scale. Okay, and then remember, we harmonized the C major scale by making these root position chords. Okay, now that's the key word today, root position, okay? Because these little shapes here where you have a white note in between each one, okay, those are what we call root position chords, okay? Meaning that the root is at the bottom, and then these are like the little leaves up here on the tree, okay? And then remember, we were discussing the 1, 4, and 5 are the three most important chords, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So your 1 chord, your 4 chord, there's your 5 chord, okay, so that's going to be kind of important for today's lesson as I go through these intervals. And you're going to probably have to stop this quite a bit and go back and practice, because here's the thing about where a piano differs from guitar. On guitar, it takes you a long time to learn how to play chords, so that kind of sucks, but at the same time, it gives you the time to process the chord that you're learning. It gives you kind of an incubation period. On piano, you can learn these chords almost instantaneously, and you can get just, as you will find out today, you're going to get a whole bunch of chords thrown at you all like in a matter of 30 minutes, and you can actually even play them, whereas on guitar it would take you months, and then you'd have time to kind of process that information. That's kind of what I found difficult about piano, is you can instantly learn all these chords, and how in the world are you going to remember all these different shapes? And today I'm going to hopefully help you out with that. Okay, so we have our C chord. Okay, so now if, say for example, we had a progression that went from C to F. Now see how I have to jump so far, and I have to take my eyes, off the sheet music if I was actually reading sheet music, or what if I was reading lyrics? F to G is not too bad, but what if I was going C to G? Maybe to the F. Okay, so you can see how we have to jump around. So now this is where inversions come in, okay? It's hard to play everything in a root inversion, and we've been learning it that way up to now, and there's nothing wrong with that at first when you're first learning. Don't worry about it, but then you reach a point where you want to start doing your inversions. And inversions also come in handy too, or where they come in handy is that eventually you want to be playing the melody, like say if you don't sing and you want a melody note, well, it might not be within your root inversion. So normally the trick or the rule that most people follow in music is that your melody wants to be the highest note. That's what the human ear is going to hear. So say for example, I had a note that was up here. What if that was my melody? Well, see here I can't do it, but what if I did in an inversion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this note, put it up here. This is first inversion, okay? Now, I have my melody note up here and I could play it. Okay, so that's kind of where inversions, come in handy. So let's go run through them. So this is root inversion. This would be first inversion. Now if I take this note and put it on top again, that's going to be second inversion, okay? Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of go off track and show you how I look at these things based on what I've learned in the past and what's really helped me, and along with throwing in a lot of my own ideas about the way I see things. And I think that this will help you a lot. So one thing I learned early on about inversions is this really doesn't do you much good calling this first inversion and second inversion. Gives you very little information, especially if you're a beginner. So I like to call this is root position. This we're going to call backwards inversion, okay? Because the C's on top, we're going backwards, okay? If I take this, put it down here, you're back to where you started, okay? So you have to remember that that's first inversion. Now, if I take this low note, the low E, put it on top, that's going to give me a second inversion, or what I like to call it, here's your root note, middle inversion, okay? So now you have first inversion, backwards inversion, middle inversion. Okay, now we're going to take this a step farther and show you how to make a little more sense out of this. So, say I'm playing the backwards inversion. Notice the difference between a root inversion, you just have one note in between, okay? When you have an inversion, you're always going to have this deal where you're going to have two notes. Okay, you can see how this is, you have your usual one note between like we did down here, but when we put that on top, you have two notes. You have that larger space. Okay, so whenever you see that space, take that finger that's to the right of it and put it down, okay? That way, if you don't recognize this as a C backwards inversion, just take where the two notes are, put that note on the bottom. Let's do it with the middle inversion. Now look, the two notes are down here, okay? Take that note, put it on top. That puts you back where you started, okay? So that's one way to keep you straight on the inversions. And really the way to really get used to this is just play a lot of songs. So let me show you one other little memory trick that I like to do, okay? My silly way of remembering things, okay? As you get older like me, you have a hard time remembering stuff, so I have to like use every little thing I can come up with. So this is backwards, the backwards inversion. The C's on the top, okay? Notice that your two white notes are to the right. And the word right has the R, backwards has an R. So when you see these to the right, it's backwards. Okay, some people will probably think that's really stupid, but it works for me. I can remember, oh, to the right, backwards, okay? That's a backwards inversion. Put my C back down there, okay? Now when you come here, so here's root, backwards, middle. Now the C's in the middle. Now look at the two notes are on your left. You have an L, middle has an L, okay? So when they're to the left, that's a middle inversion, okay? To get back to where you started, put that on top, okay? So that will help you keep your inversions straight, okay? Because, and again, you know, if you call this second inversion, where's your root note? If you don't have that totally memorized, and believe me, unless you've been playing for years, it's hard to memorize all those different chords. So by knowing this as middle, bam, you know that that's a C, okay? Second inversion doesn't tell you anything, okay? So same thing here. First inversion, you know, well, you know, it's the first inversion, but if you call it backwards, you know that that's right there on the top instantaneously. There's your root note, okay? So now I'll show you a few other things you can do with these, okay? And again, you may have to pause this a lot of times because this can get confusing. So let's go through and look at a lot of different inversions, okay? And what happens with this, because you can see that this can exponentially get complicated. Exponentially fast, I should say. So we're going to do this first. What happens if I just move my pinky up one note? So we're here. Now, guess what? I've just created an inversion of some type, right? Just by moving one finger. Now I'm not playing a C. This is a C in root position, but now I've done this. This is a different chord, but remember our little trick. I have two notes to the right, which is backwards. So that tells me that since it's backwards, it's an A. It's an A minor backwards inversion. And here's back to C. Okay, so that's a good exercise to do. So remember, right, two to the right are backwards. Here's your backwards inversion. Now, what happens if I do this? Let's create another inversion from the C. What if I do this? Okay, now I've created yet another inversion. See that? Now my two notes are on the left for middle. Okay, well that's telling me I'm playing an E minor. Okay, now you kind of have to hear this. You know, if you're a total beginner, you may not know the difference between an E minor or E major, but eventually you'll hear that sound. But you're going to know if when you harmonize the major scale, you know, and you should have done that if you reached this point. If you followed my lessons, you have C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, C. Okay, so you're going to know if you're on an E, it's going to be an E minor. Okay, so see what we did by moving one note, we created an E minor, and you have the two white notes on the left, which means it's going to be middle. So there's your root note is there, E. If I take this again, where these two notes are, I take this, put it up here. There's that E minor. See, so now we've got C. I could go to A if I move my. See that? So start there. Just remember, move one finger, either right or left. Okay, now the other thing we can do here is to move two fingers. Okay, what if I take these two and move them up here? Okay, that creates an F chord, but let's take it apart. Okay, again, so you do this, and you move two fingers up. And you look at that and you go, what chord is that? Sounds good. Here's your two notes here, right? To the left means it's middle. Guess what? That note is your root note. So this is an F middle inversion. Again, to prove it, two notes, take that bottom note, move it up here. Voila, there's your F chord. So you can see how much easier this is. This way. Okay, see that? That's C to F. And if I wanted to go to a G, remember our 1, 4, and 5, C, F, and G. Here's C, here's F. Now to go to a G, I just have to hop up one note, kind of like we did here too. You know, so those two chords don't have a note in common, but we can just, they're a half step apart, or a step apart, I'm sorry. So it's pretty easy to reach. But you can see how the C and the F has that C note in common. Okay, so now let's go the other way. Let's take these two notes move them down. Now we have this. Okay, again, so now what chord is this? Let's do this rule here that I think I invented. Well, I probably didn't invent it, you know, so I'm sure somebody else has probably come to this conclusion before, but this I think really helps a lot. Here's our two notes. They're to the right. R backwards. It's the backwards inversion. So here's your G. So we're playing a G chord. Take that root note, put it down here, and voila, that proves it. There's your G root position. So now, let's see, I'm just going to vamp on a C here. Watch this. So this is cool. Here's C, F, C, G, C, F, okay. If I want to go to an A minor, just move my pinky up one note like we did previously. Go back to your C. Oops. If I want to go to an E minor, middle inversion, I just move my thumb down. Keep hitting that one note. And then we're going to go to the E minor. So look at all the chords you get right there from that one position. You have C, A minor, C, E minor middle inversion, C, F, C, G. Okay, so that may take you a few hours just to sit down and play with that and really let all that sink in. It's a great thing to do. So now let's do another little thing. We're going to go to we're going to start here on the C, backwards inversion. Let's pretend now we have to go C to F. Well, remember C and F has that C note in common, so we're just going to do this. Let's see, so what else could we do? Okay, so you can do some stuff like this if we play this C chord or the C in the backwards position. Look at this. If I leave my first finger and do this. See how I've just basically switched it around? So this is kind of a cool thing to do when you're in backwards inversion. Okay, so again, here's your two notes here. They're on the right, so it's a backwards inversion, so that's a C. Now, if I keep this here, toggle this way, now I've got two notes on the bottom. Okay, so on the left, that's the middle. So this is G middle inversion. Again, to prove it, there's the two notes. Take that, put it up here. There's my G. Okay, so now you can have C backwards inversion, F, okay, lots of cool stuff you can do there. Now let's go to the C middle inversion. Let's see what we can do here. What if we were going to go C to F this way? Okay, again, now this is our root note. I can do a toggle this way. Okay, so again, this is C root position. Keep my note here. Remember, C and F had that C note in common. I do this. And again, this is my two notes are to the right, so it's backwards, and again, there's your F. See that? That's an F backwards inversion. C, bring this down, there's my G. Another fun thing to do is to keep this finger, your third finger on that C. This is kind of cool. Gives you some kind of a suspended sounding thing. Keep that in mind. Now what you can do, like I said, you know, you have to really be patient with yourself and just take each section. And that's why I'm just kind of doing this left thing here, this vamping with my left hand. So now at this point you're starting to probably see all the possibilities. So what happens, this just to throw out some ideas. So say I do this, and I go to the G. Now remember what we did earlier, we said we could do this. There's my C again. What about this? So if I'm on my G, what if I just take those two notes? What chord is that? Well, here's my two notes. Right backwards, it's a backwards D minor. Okay, so I could be here on my C. So that brings up another fun thing you can do. I'm going to go back to C here. Remember we said we can move these two notes up. So if we're playing in the key of C, you can play these thirds. Okay, so you could be doing this. Okay, so again, so this is going to be kind of, I guess, can turn into a half improvising lesson, I should say, because this is what I find that I end up doing when I'm working on these chords, is you just end up improvising and making up stuff. But you know, there's just so many different ideas you can do with this. So again, what about when I have this C middle inversion? Okay, I can take these where you have the two white notes. Well, we know that this is a C middle inversion, right? But I have these thirds here, so you can play with those. So this is C, this is a G, but this ends up being like an F sus2. So now, let's do the C backwards inversion. Again, here's my two notes to the right. There's your C chord. Now I have this grouping. just on the root position. Okay, so I know that's a lot of stuff there, okay? But let me just kind of go through this real quick and just show you kind of okay, so see, and sorry if that was kind of crude, but I was just making that up just now as I went along and just playing with those little shapes that I just showed you, and you can see how much fun that can be. Now, one thing I would tell you to do before we end this lesson is, so I showed you at the very beginning, just off the C chord, moving one note up, one note down, and then two notes up and two notes down. Take it and go through the whole scale and see if you can figure out what chords you're playing. Okay, I'll do one more for you, then the rest I will leave up to you. Okay, and we can discuss this if you run into a problem. Okay, because it does get to be somewhat confusing at times, but you'll learn a lot if you do this on your own. So let's start with the D minor. Okay. Now again, let's move the pinky up. Let's take one note up. Well, let me do this. First, let's do the inversions on D minor, okay? So here's root, okay? Here's backwards. Here's the two to the right. And here's middle. Now the D's in the middle, okay? So root, backwards, middle. Okay. Root, backwards, middle. Now, let's move the pinky up one note. Let's see what chord we get. Okay, again, so now there's our two notes. We can take that, put it down here. Okay, that ends up being our B diminished, okay? Remember, C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, okay? One thing you should note is that this is actually part of if you play a root of a G, that ends up being a G7th, okay? We'll discuss this in later lessons, but that's called plurality when you have a chord within a chord. Like, say for example, if I play a G7th, within that G7th is that B diminished, okay? But anyways, that's what note we made by doing this. Now let's move the thumb down. So now we got this, we have this chord. What is that? Here's our two notes. Take that on top. That ends up being a G. I'm sorry, that ends up being an F, okay? So it's an F. Okay, so now let's do the two fingers. What does that end up being? Okay, that ends up being, take your root note, or take this note where the two white notes are on top. You're on a G now. Okay, D minor, do this. Take these two fingers, move them down. Okay, there's your two notes. Put them down there. It's an A minor backwards inversion. Okay, so then do the same thing. Start on your E, do the same thing on F. Go through all those chords and see how many chords you can figure out. And it's kind of a fun thing. If you're playing all these white notes, you can just vamp here on this low C. Some chords sound good and some don't, but just when you throw the left hand in when you get comfortable with the right hand, and that will maybe help you with with your inversions, or get some sheet music out that has some easy chords and see how many chords you can connect. So anyways, that's it for the inversions. I hope you enjoyed that, and try to spend a week or so on this, or even longer if you can, and try to really grasp all these different chords. It's a seemingly simple on the surface, but can get to be confusing at times. Okay, so anyways, folks, I sure appreciate you dropping by. Would really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to my website if you like this video, and I'll be coming up with more, and hopefully, you know, if you have any comments, hopefully you'll be comfortable leaving them, and let me know if there's something I could help you with. So anyways, I sure appreciate you dropping by. I hope you have a great day, and in my limited capacity to speak Spanish, I will just say hasta la bye-bye.